The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with soft streaks of orange. The airport was buzzing with noise, announcements echoing, suitcases rolling, hurried footsteps mixing with the distant roar of planes taking off. Amid the rush, Heisu, a young man with delicate features and tired eyes, sat quietly near the boarding gate. He clutched his phone in both hands, staring at the screen but barely reading the words. His chest felt heavy. This wasn't just another trip, it was an escape. One-way flight, he whispered under his breath. The words left a bitter taste, as though saying them out loud made the decision all too real. He scrolled through the last unread messages on his phone. A mixture of concern and anger filled them, friends asking where he was, family telling him to come back, and one message he couldn't bring himself to delete. It was from him. Short. Cold. Final. Don't wait for me. Heisu's fingers trembled as he turned off the phone. He pressed it against his chest for a moment, as if holding it could stop the ache inside him. Just then, a voice broke through the crowd. You're really going through with this? Heisu looked up. Standing a few steps away was Yuan, tall and sharp-eyed, his expression unreadable. He looked completely out of place in the airport crowd, dressed neatly in dark clothes that made him stand out even more. His presence was overwhelming, like the world dimmed around him. Heisu's breath caught. Why are you here? Yuan stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. Because you're running away. Heisu clenched his jaw, gripping the handle of his small suitcase. It's none of your business. I just need to leave. Yuan's gaze softened, but only slightly. You think getting on that plane will erase everything? You think distance will change the truth? The words stung. Heisu bit down on his lip, refusing to meet Yuan's eyes. His heart pounded against his ribs, part fear, part anger, and something else he didn't want to name. There was a tense silence between them, filled only by the muffled sound of an announcement in the background, Flight 207 to Tokyo, now boarding. Heisu straightened, his voice trembling but determined. I don't care what you think. This is my choice. Yuan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your choice, or your way of running from me? Heisu froze. The words cut deeper than he expected. His chest tightened, and his grip on the suitcase weakened. He wanted to scream, deny it, anything, but nothing came out. Finally, with a sharp breath, Heisu turned away. Goodbye, Yuan. He took a step toward the boarding gate, but before he could move further, Yuan's hand caught his wrist. His grip was firm, unyielding, sending a shiver down Heisu's spine. The tension between them was suffocating. Passengers bustled around them, but for Heisu, it felt like the world had gone quiet, just him, Yuan, and the unspoken weight of everything left unsaid. Yuan's grip on Heisu's wrist tightened just slightly, enough to stop him but not enough to hurt. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper, though his eyes burned with intensity. Tell me the truth, Heisu. Are you really leaving because of me? Heisu's chest clenched. He wanted to pull away, but his body refused to move. The truth sat heavy on his tongue, but he couldn't let it slip out. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. It doesn't matter anymore. You already made yourself clear. Yuan's expression flickered, something raw flashing in his eyes, but it was gone almost instantly, replaced with that same unreadable calm. He released Heisu's wrist slowly, as if letting go of something fragile he wasn't ready to lose. Heisu rubbed at his wrist unconsciously, trying to steady his breathing. He kept his gaze fixed on the boarding gate, refusing to meet Yuan's eyes again. If he did, he knew he might break. Heisu. Yuan's voice softened, so unlike his usual tone. If you step onto that plane, there's no turning back. Are you ready for that? Heisu bit down hard on his lip. His throat ached as he forced the words out. That's the point. I don't want to turn back. The boarding announcement echoed again, urging passengers to proceed. Heisu gripped the handle of his suitcase and moved forward. Each step felt heavy, but he pushed himself to keep going. Yuan didn't stop him this time. He just stood there, watching, his tall figure casting a long shadow under the airport lights. His hands clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. Haesu walked toward the gate, but with every step, memories clawed at him, memories of Yuhan's laughter, his warmth, the way he used to look at him as if no one else in the world mattered. And then, just as quickly, the memory of Yuhan's cold words. "Don't wait for me." The sharp contrast made Haesu's eyes sting. He blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall in such a crowded place. As he handed his ticket to the gate agent, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart stopped. He hesitated for a moment, then pulled it out. One unread message. From Yuan. His fingers trembled as he opened it. "If you leave now, I won't come after you." Haesu froze in place, staring at the words on the screen. The boarding agent gave him a polite smile and gestured toward the jet bridge, but Haesu's feet wouldn't move. His chest rose and fell sharply, every breath painful. Behind him, he could still feel Yuhan's presence. He didn't need to look back to know Yuan hadn't left. For a long moment, the world seemed to hang still. The decision pressed down on Haesu's shoulders: leave and never look back, or stay and face the man who broke him. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the phone. His lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, with a shaky breath, he took a step forward. The gate closed in front of him, and the announcement rang again. Yuan turned his head slightly, watching Haesu's back disappear down the jet bridge. His eyes darkened, a storm hidden beneath his calm expression. He muttered under his breath, too quiet for anyone to hear. "You think you can escape me that easily?" The hum of the jet bridge swallowed Haesu as he walked inside. The air smelled faintly of metal and recycled air, the kind of sterile coldness that only airports carried. His steps echoed in the narrow corridor, each one heavier than the last. He settled into his seat by the window, clutching his bag like a lifeline. Outside, the sky was deepening into twilight, and the runway lights flickered against the fading colors of day. Haesu leaned his forehead against the glass, eyes distant. For the first time, he was truly alone. The flight attendants moved about, preparing passengers for takeoff. Haesu barely heard them. His mind replayed the encounter at the gate, Yuhan's voice, his grip, the weight of his stare. And then that message. "If you leave now, I won't come after you." His chest tightened painfully. He wanted to scream, "Why didn't you stop me?" But the truth was, Yuan had always been like this, pushing him away with words but pulling him back with actions. A cycle that left Haesu exhausted. The plane began to taxi, a low rumble filling the cabin. Haesu's fingers curled against the armrest. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. This is it. No turning back. Yet, as the plane lifted off the ground, a strange unease washed over him. The city lights blurred beneath the clouds, and with every passing second, the distance between him and Yuan grew. But instead of relief, all he felt was a hollow ache. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Yuan remained standing by the empty gate. People passed by him, voices blending into white noise, but he didn't move. His tall frame seemed carved from stone, his expression unreadable. He had told himself to let Haesu go. That it was better this way. Yet, deep down, the thought of Haesu disappearing into another city, another life, gnawed at him. He slipped his hands into his pockets, pulling out his phone. For a moment, he hesitated. Then his thumb moved across the screen, typing out a message he wasn't sure he should send. "Wherever you go, you're still mine." But before he pressed send, he stopped. His jaw clenched, and he deleted the words one by one. A hollow laugh escaped his lips. Pathetic. Instead, he turned and walked away, his long strides purposeful, though the storm in his chest only grew louder. On the plane, Haesu drifted in and out of uneasy thoughts. The flight attendants served drinks, and he accepted a cup of water, though his hands shook slightly. He tried to focus on anything, his ticket, the hum of the engine, the faint chatter of passengers, but his mind always circled back to Yuan. His phone lay silent in his pocket, no new messages. The silence felt louder than any words could have. Finally, unable to stop himself, Haesu pulled it out and stared at Yuan's last message again. He read it over and over until the letters blurred. "If you leave now, I won't come after you." Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes. He turned off the phone again, pressing it against his chest as though he could hold back the loneliness threatening to swallow him. I chose this. I have to see it through. But deep down, as the plane soared through the night sky, a single thought whispered inside him. Why does it feel like running away doesn't mean freedom, but losing everything instead? The plane cabin had grown quiet. Most passengers were either dozing off or absorbed in their own worlds, the dimmed lights casting a soft glow over the rows of seats. Heiso sat upright, his gaze fixed on the faint reflection in the window. It wasn't the sky or the clouds he saw, it was Yuan's face. Those piercing eyes, that voice that never left him. He squeezed his fists tightly in his lap. Why can't I stop thinking about him? He wanted this flight to be his escape, but instead, it felt like carrying his memories into the sky. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Excuse me, are you all right? Heiso blinked and turned his head. A flight attendant was leaning slightly toward him, concern in her eyes. I'm fine, he murmured quickly, forcing a faint smile. She studied him for a moment longer before nodding politely and moving down the aisle. Heiso let out a shaky breath. His pulse was racing, and he realized his palms were damp with sweat. He leaned back in his seat, shutting his eyes. Get a grip, Heiso. It's over. But no matter how many times he told himself that, his chest refused to believe it. Back on the ground, Yuan's evening had been anything but calm. He returned to his car in the parking lot, sliding into the driver's seat with a heavy exhale. He gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, his mind a blur. The faint reflection of his own eyes in the windshield stared back at him, cold, hard, unreadable. But he wasn't calm. Not even close. The image of Heiso walking away played over and over in his head. The words Heiso had said echoed like a wound that wouldn't close. It doesn't matter anymore. You already made yourself clear. Yuan slammed his fist against the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He hated this helplessness. He had always been in control, always the one to decide how close or how far people could get. But Heiso was different. Heiso slipping away felt like losing air itself. He leaned back, dragging a hand over his face. His phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. He glanced at it, but didn't pick it up. He already knew who it wasn't from. Instead, he muttered under his breath, "You think you can just walk away?" The words were quiet, but they carried a dangerous promise. Hours passed in the air. Heiso dozed lightly, but his sleep was restless. Dreams blurred into memories, flashes of laughter with Yuan, fleeting touches, moments where he felt safe. Then the sharp sting of cold rejection, those words he couldn't erase. He woke with a start, his breathing uneven. His hand automatically reached for his phone, even though he knew it was useless. The screen lit up, no messages. He stared at the emptiness for a long time before turning it off again. The seatbelt sign blinked as the captain announced their descent. The cabin filled with soft murmurs of passengers preparing to land. Heiso tightened his grip on his bag, staring blankly out the window as the city lights of his destination came into view. A fresh start. That was what he wanted. That was why he left. But as the plane touched down and the wheels screeched against the runway, his heart whispered something he didn't want to hear. It doesn't matter how far you run, Heiso. Some things, you can never escape. The plane doors opened with a hiss, releasing the stale cabin air into the brightly lit terminal. Heiso stepped out among the other passengers, clutching the strap of his bag tightly. The city beyond the airport was unfamiliar, its neon lights visible even from here, glittering like a world untouched by his past. Every step forward should have felt like freedom, but instead, it felt like dragging chains behind him. As he passed through the arrivals hall, he found himself glancing over his shoulder, half expecting, half hoping to see Yuan's tall frame pushing through the crowd. But of course, Yuan wasn't there. He had made it clear, "If you leave now, I won't come after you." Heiso's chest ached, but he forced himself to keep moving. He exited into the night air, the city sounds immediately engulfing him, honking cars, chatter, and the distant hum of nightlife. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself, trying to ignore the emptiness gnawing at his heart. Meanwhile, far away, Yuan sat alone in his apartment, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. His suit jacket was discarded carelessly on the couch, his tie loosened, but he hadn't bothered to change. He sat with a glass in his hand, untouched, staring at nothing. On the table lay his phone, the screen dark. He had checked it countless times, waiting for a message that never came. He lifted the glass finally, swirling the liquid inside before setting it back down with a sharp clink. His jaw tightened. So that's it, huh? You chose to leave. But even as he told himself that, something inside him rebelled. He remembered the look in Jesus' eyes at the gate: fear, sadness, longing. That wasn't someone who wanted to let go. Yuan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. You think I'll just sit here and accept it, he muttered to himself. His lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. You really don't know me at all, Jesus. Jesus found a small taxi outside the terminal. He slid into the back seat, giving the driver the address of the hotel he had booked in advance. The ride was quiet, the city lights streaking past the window in vibrant colors. He rested his head against the cool glass, eyes heavy. But the moment he closed them, he saw Yuan's face again. He groaned softly and covered his eyes with his hand. Why can't I escape him? The taxi pulled up to the hotel, and Jesus paid quickly before heading inside. The lobby was quiet, the soft glow of chandeliers giving it an almost dreamlike atmosphere. He checked in, took his key, and made his way up to the room. The moment he stepped inside, the silence hit him. Alone. Completely alone. He dropped his bag to the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall. His phone lay on the nightstand, dark and silent. Jesus lay back, pulling the covers over himself. He told himself he should sleep, that tomorrow would be the start of his new life. But as he drifted in and out of restless thoughts, the last thing that echoed in his mind was Yuan's voice. Your choice, or your way of running from me? The words lingered like a chain wrapped around his heart. And even in this new city, far from everything he knew, Jesus realized he hadn't really escaped. Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the thin curtains of the hotel room. Jesus stirred awake, his body heavy with exhaustion. For a brief moment, he forgot where he was. Then the unfamiliar ceiling, the sterile white sheets, and the distant sounds of the city reminded him he was no longer home. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. His phone lay on the nightstand, untouched since last night. He reached for it hesitantly, his heart hammering with hope he didn't want to admit. The screen lit up. No new messages. Jesus' hand trembled before he set the phone down again, his chest tightening with disappointment. He whispered to himself, of course, why would there be? He pushed himself to his feet, splashed water on his face in the bathroom, and stared at his reflection. His eyes were swollen, his expression tired. This is the fresh start I wanted, isn't it? But even as he tried to convince himself, the ache inside refused to fade. Across the city skyline, back in his office, Yuan was far from calm. His subordinates spoke nervously during the morning meeting, but his attention wasn't on them. He sat at the head of the table, his sharp gaze fixed on the documents in front of him, though he hadn't turned a page. Every word Jesus had spoken replayed in his mind. Every look, every tear. He clenched his pen tightly, the metal bending slightly under the force of his grip. One of his assistants hesitated before speaking. Director Yuan, do you want us to proceed with the proposal? Yuan's eyes flicked up, cold and cutting. The assistant immediately lowered his head. Handle it without me, Yuan said flatly. He rose from his seat and left the room, his long strides purposeful. On the surface, he appeared collected as always, but inside, the storm only grew stronger. You think I'll just let you go, Jesus? Jesus spent the day wandering the unfamiliar streets of the new city. The neon signs, the small shops, the chatter of strangers, all of it should have distracted him, but it didn't. Every face in the crowd seemed to blur into Yuan's. Every voice seemed to echo his name. He stopped by a small cafe, ordering coffee just to have something warm in his hands. He sat near the window, staring out at the passing people. The bitterness of the drink spread across his tongue, but he barely noticed. Memories surfaced again, the way Yuan used to smile when no one else was looking, the warmth of his hand, the sharp sting of his rejection. Heise pressed his forehead against the cool window glass, shutting his eyes. He thought leaving would be enough to silence those memories, but instead, it felt like they followed him here, louder than before. That night, back in his hotel room, Heise lay awake. His phone rested on the pillow beside him, the screen dark. He told himself not to check it anymore, not to hope for anything. But still, every hour, he picked it up and stared at the empty notifications. Loneliness pressed down on him, heavier than he imagined. He curled up under the blankets, whispering into the silence. "Why do I still want you to come after me?" The words hung in the empty room, unanswered. Far away, Yuan stood by the tall windows of his apartment, the city lights spread beneath him. His phone was in his hand, his thumb hovering over Heise's contact. He wanted to call. To hear his voice. To tell him not to go any further. But instead, he let the phone drop to his side, his jaw tightening. His eyes burned with an intensity that could break steel. "You can run as far as you want, Heise," he muttered. "But you're still mine." The days blended together, each one heavier than the last. Heise tried to convince himself that he was adjusting. He went out, bought groceries, even walked through crowded markets as if he belonged there. But no matter what he did, the emptiness lingered. Every night, he returned to the same silent hotel room, where the shadows felt too large and the air too cold. His phone remained his constant companion, always within reach, always silent. Heise lay on the bed one evening, staring at the ceiling. The city's lights flickered faintly through the curtains. He pressed the phone against his chest, whispering into the darkness. "Yuan, do you even care that I'm gone?" The question tore at him, even though he already knew the answer, or at least the one Yuan had given him. "Don't wait for me." And yet, his heart betrayed him. It still hoped. Meanwhile, Yuan's patience had thinned to nothing. He sat in his office long after his employees had left, the glow of the city spilling through the tall windows. Papers lay scattered across his desk, ignored. His hand rested on his phone, his thumb brushing over Heise's name again and again. For days, he had fought the urge. He told himself it was better to let Heise go. That if Heise chose to leave, then so be it. But the thought of someone else finding him, touching him, claiming the place Yuan had always held, it was unbearable. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened. Finally, he pressed the call button. Heise's phone buzzed suddenly in the quiet hotel room. His eyes widened, his heart leaping into his throat. For a moment, he froze, staring at the glowing screen as if it were a hallucination. The name on the display, Yuan. His hands trembled as he picked it up. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the accept button. His chest tightened with fear and longing all at once. Finally, with a shaky breath, he answered. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end, heavy and suffocating. Then Yuhan's voice, low and steady. "So this is where you've run off to?" Heise's breath caught. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. "Why are you calling?" Yuhan's tone sharpened. "Why do you think? Did you really believe I'd let you disappear without a word?" Heise squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the tears threatening to fall. "You told me not to wait for you. You made it clear you didn't want me." There was a pause. Then Yuhan's voice dropped, soft and dangerous. "I never said I didn't want you, Heise. I said don't wait." "That's different." Heise's lips trembled. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Yuhan's reply came instantly, his voice like steel. "Stay where you are. I'll come to you." Heise's eyes widened, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. "What?" But before he could say anything more, the line went dead. Heise lowered the phone slowly, staring at it in shock. His hands shook as the weight of Yuhan's words sank in. He whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. "He's coming here?" Heise sat frozen on the bed, the silence of the room pressing down heavier than ever. Yuhan's words echoed in his mind, over and over. "Stay where you are. I'll come to you." His hands clutched the phone tightly, as if it could somehow anchor him. His heart pounded so loudly he thought it might burst from his chest. For days, he had begged silently for Yuan to reach out. But now that it had happened, fear gripped him. What did Yuan mean by coming here? What would he do when he arrived? Heisa buried his face in his hands, trembling. Why can't I just escape you? Across the city, Yuan was already in motion. He had made the call, and that was enough. His mind was clear now, dangerously so. He gave sharp orders to his driver, his voice firm. Prepare the car. Tonight. His assistant, startled, stammered, Director, it's late, where are you? But Yuan cut him off with a single glance, cold and absolute. I won't repeat myself. Within minutes, he was on the road, the city lights streaking past the car windows. His tall figure sat straight-backed in the seat, one hand resting casually against his jaw, but his eyes glinted with fierce determination. Heisa thought he could leave him behind. Heisa thought he could run. But Yuan wasn't the kind of man who let go. Not when it came to him. Back in the hotel, Heisa paced the room restlessly. His phone lay on the bed, the screen black, but he couldn't stop glancing at it, as though it would ring again. Every sound from the hallway made him jump. Footsteps. The rumble of the elevator. The creak of doors. His mind twisted them all into Yuan's approach. He pressed his back against the wall, whispering to himself, he won't really come, right? He was just trying to scare me. But even as he said it, his heart told him otherwise. Yuan never made empty promises. The hours stretched long, each minute feeling like an eternity. The weight of expectation and dread pressed down on Heisa until finally, exhaustion dragged him into uneasy sleep. Sometime past midnight, headlights cut through the quiet street outside the hotel. A sleek black car pulled up, its engine purring low before going silent. The door opened, and Yuan stepped out. His tall figure loomed under the streetlights, his sharp features half hidden in shadow. He glanced up at the hotel building, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with intent. He straightened his coat, adjusted his cuffs, and walked toward the entrance with steady, deliberate steps. Inside, the night staff greeted him politely, but he barely acknowledged them. His presence was commanding enough that no one dared to stop him. He moved like a man who already knew where he was going. And as he pressed the elevator button, his lips curved faintly. Not with warmth, but with something far more dangerous. Found you, Heisa. The hotel room was quiet, the only sound Heisa's soft breathing as he slept. His body curled beneath the blankets, but even in sleep, his expression was tense, as if he were bracing for something. Outside, the elevator chimed softly as it reached the upper floor. Yuan stepped out, his tall frame casting a shadow across the polished hallway. His footsteps echoed faintly as he walked toward the door he knew belonged to Heisa. Each step was calm, deliberate, yet the fire in his eyes betrayed the storm raging within. He stopped in front of the room. For a moment, he simply stood there, his hand hovering over the door. His jaw tightened, his breath steady but heavy. He could almost picture Heisa on the other side, fragile, trembling, trying so desperately to escape him. A faint smile curved Yuan's lips. Did you really think you could leave me behind? He murmured under his breath. Then, without hesitation, he raised his hand and knocked. Inside, Heisa stirred awake, his eyes blinking open slowly. For a moment, he thought he had only dreamed the sound. But then the knock came again, firm, deliberate, impossible to ignore. His heart lurched. He sat up in bed, staring at the door with wide eyes. Fear and anticipation tangled violently in his chest. Another knock. Louder this time. Heisa, a deep voice called, muffled but unmistakable. Yuan. Heisa's breath caught in his throat. His hands trembled as he clutched the blanket tightly around himself. No, it can't be, he whispered. But the sound of his name spoken in that voice told him otherwise. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the rapid pounding of Heisa's heart. Finally, Yuan's voice came again, low and certain. Open the door. You know I won't leave without you. Heise's lips parted, but no words came out. He sat frozen on the bed, staring at the door as though it might burst open at any moment. And deep down, despite the fear twisting through him, a dangerous truth surfaced: he had wanted this. Part of him had always known Yuan would come. The final knock echoed through the room, sharp and commanding, leaving Heise trembling on the edge of a choice he could no longer avoid.